Interesting, it's never actually happened before. And so I'm glad I have a daughter old enough that she can interview me and learn a little bit about the journey that we've had as a family. Yeah, and I never got a chance to interview my father, so I'm glad that you've had a chance to interview me.
And I'm looking forward to it as well. So watching the documentary, we can all agree that your father would go on very dangerous shoots. So as an only child, when you would go away, did you feel a sense of responsibility that you may need to leave the man in the house sooner than you would have hoped?
Actually, no. I used to really like it when he went away when I was younger because I would have freedom to do the things that I could never do when he was around. So like we said in the documentary, he didn't really have a childhood, so he didn't understand why I would need to go to a party or go to a nightclub or go to any activity outside of study. He couldn't understand that, so I'd only get the opportunity to do that when he was away, which was a lot, fortunately. Fortunately, my mother was, very lenient with me and spoiled me and allowed me to do these things, probably wrongly, looking back. But yeah, so I didn't understand, and I also didn't really understand what he did until I was much older. So I didn't really understand the importance of the work that he did, or why it was relevant to the world, what difference it made. To me, it was just, this guy's, he's away, he does a few stories, and comes back, and people seem to know who he is, and that's the end of it. But he's really strict with me, and he's mean, and he doesn't let me do anything. That was so.
So you're telling me that, so as of right now, obviously we're blessed to have technology that can help us communicate with people around the world. So there was no sense of anxiety that you felt not being able to connect with him or not being able to communicate with him when he went? Or was it literally just you didn't have that connection with him, so you didn't care, I guess?
No, not so much care. I think it was important that this was all I knew. So from when I was born, this is all that I knew. So I assumed it was normal for a father to be like that and not be there and not be able to talk to him about my, school or issues or sports or anything like that, because he wasn't interested. So I talked to my mother about these kinds of things, or more likely I would talk to my friends. I made a lot of friends, and my friends became very close. Being an only child, I'm sure there's lots of people who are only child here, when you kind of get very close to your friends, sometimes to the detriment of your life, because maybe they're not a great influence on you, but that's all you really know is the people around you. So I gravitated a lot more towards my friends. And I just thought that was normal, because I didn't know anything else.
Your father's forte was frontline journalism. Why did you take a different path in journalism?
So I started off doing frontline journalism. When I came back from university, 1992, my first assignment was in Somalia. The Americans had just come in for Operation Restore Hope, and I went in with the team to go to Somalia, and we spent a fair amount of time there. And then after that, the Rwanda genocide happened, and then the war in between North and South Sudan. So I did some of those stories, not as much as the other people in the company, but I realized that I was shit scared. I was like, I did not want to do this. I was really, really scared every time I went to these places, especially after Rwanda in '94, and I realized that if I was that scared, something bad was going to happen, because the people that do this for a living, they have a little bit of a screw loose. I think you need to have that type of a character in order to go and do this. You need to have no fear at all in order to do this kind of work, because otherwise you can't operate, you can't freeze, you can't second guess yourself. And I used to do that all the time, and I realized that I do not want to do this, and I can't do this, and if I continue doing I will die because something will happen. So I had this conversation with him, and it didn't go down very well because he couldn't understand. He's like, what is wrong with you? Why did I send you to university to go and study journalism? And you're supposed to be doing this. Why are you scared? What kind of nonsense is this? What idiot type of? So he was not happy at all. But fortunately, in '94, '95, he launched a show called Africa Journal, which was a half-hour, not current affairs, a half-hour magazine program that looked at all the beauty of this continent, the successes, the talent, the wildlife, the sceneries, the flora, the places to visit, the food. And for me, that was magic because that was what I really enjoyed doing those types of stories. So I ended up working with Africa Journal and editing.
So do you think, you mentioned that you were scared to do this. Is there a reason why your confidence was so low? Do you feel like your dad kind of had something to do with that to make you not feel like you could do it? Or was it just you just scared?
No, I think, and he always, the thing is that he never wanted me to do this job. He never wanted me to be a journalist. Right from the beginning, he said, you want to get a real job. This is not a real job. This is, you're not around. You're away from your family. It's a dangerous, job to be in. Get a real, become a doctor. You're a typical Asian, South Asian household. Become a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, and you'll be happy and you'll earn more money, and you'll do this. And he said, you're not, this is not a job. But I had been bitten by this bug since I was 7 or 8 years old, since I started doing the safari rally with him. That's all I ever really wanted to do. So I pursued that. I wasn't very bright anyway, so I couldn't do anything else like become a lawyer or a doctor. I didn't have the grades or the intelligence to do any of those things. So this was kind of a default setting for me. And but he encouraged me wherever I wanted encouragement. He was there to encourage me. He never put me down. He did abuse me a lot because I think he also wanted to show other people in the company that there would be no favors because I happened to be his son. So he treated me worse than anybody else in the company just to make a point. But I understood that, and some of the people that are still sitting here, Abdul in particular, the amazing sound man, has been in that company since I was 5 or 6 years old, and the fact that he's still stuck around gives me hope that he'll still be around for a while.
Good. Now going back to frontline journalism, with new social media and the vastness of biased journalism, why is frontline journalism, do you think, still as important?
Frontline journalism has changed tremendously. Social media technology has completely transformed this industry. Frontline journalism now is being recorded. Breaking news is being recorded by people with mobile phones. I don't think ever, unless you happen to be really, really, really lucky, I don't think any professional journalist will break a story visually in the next, ever, from now going forward, for the last 10 years going forward. Every breaking news story has been recorded by somebody with an ordinary citizen with a mobile phone, because there's just no way you can compete with that. 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you had to wait for professional journalists to get to a place and cover a story, and it took 48 hours to get the pictures out and put them on a satellite feed and get them to the newsrooms and then to edit them, and people had time, and that's why stories had more depth and more meaning back then, I think. The Ethiopian famine story, it ran 8.5 minutes on primetime news around the world. 8.5-minute bulletin had never happened in history. It's never happened since that time either. because 8.5 minutes is an enormously long time for a news package. And the reason it did that is because it was so powerful. Michael Berg had 3 or 4 days to write this incredible script and voice it. They had time to edit the piece properly, and that's why it was so powerful. You would never get that opportunity now, because now those media outlets, the BBCs, the NBCs, the others, they're no longer the primary source of news and information for young people. They look at social media, they look on Instagram, they look at Twitter, they look at Facebook, they look at Snapchat, whatever they look at, and that's where they get their information from. So it's completely changed, but I still feel our profession is very important. You know, we need to still be there to at least give analysis, context, background to some of the stories that are taking place in the world, not just a micro snapshot of something on a Twitter feed with 140 characters or a couple of pictures on Instagram.
So, with you saying all this, how do you think if Mo Amin was still alive today, he would have been able to handle the, new social media and how it is, and how everybody, in a way, can take these images if they're in the right place at the right time? So how do you think he would have?
It's a very good question, Sandeep, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure he would have found a way to adapt to this platform, the new platforms that are coming out. And somebody once said something very important at a talk I went to. It was the director, James Cameron, who knows what he's talking about when it comes to content. He said the phrase that we're all very familiar with: content is king. And he said, doesn't matter what platform comes now or in the future, if you have good content, it will go on any platform, in any context. The bottom line is you have to make compelling, good content. And that was what he was a master of. And if you look at some of the photos that are around you today that he took, they still, for me anyway, they still have resonance and history behind them. They still tell stories. And whether you put them on a Twitter feed or an Instagram page or on Facebook, they will still have meaning and impact because they were so good. So I think, whatever platform, and there will be many new, now we have these platforms that we're talking about, but going forward there will be many new platforms coming in. But the content still has to be good, otherwise people will not absorb it.
So, from a non-biased point of view, because I know who's supposed to bother, from your perspective, let's take the Ethiopian man, for example. What do you think made his pictures so unique, or him being a journalist so unique, to make him what he is, till this day? Or
So a number of different things. One was the fact that he was African. He was from this continent. He was born and raised on this continent, and therefore he had access, context, connections, knowledge of the different places that he was going to. He researched, he made friends, he knew where to go, he knew which stories were going to be big before they became big. He had a lot of local knowledge, which is something that I think put him miles ahead of foreign correspondents coming in to cover it. Because in those days, really it was only foreign correspondents that were telling Africa's stories. There was not many local journalists. It has changed now because we have so many talented local journalists that are doing stories for international networks as well as local networks. So his local knowledge and the fact that this was his continent gave him a huge advantage. Secondly, because he was local, Ethiopia was interesting. The reason that those pictures, I feel, had so much impact is because he had spent so many decades in Ethiopia covering the country that he had this connection with the people, and he was able to bring out the dignity with which they were dealing with this situation, which was completely out of their control. But the dignity that they died with was something that he was able to portray because he had this connection to these people. And the fact that he kept coming back again, wouldn't let this story die, is something that foreign correspondents would not be interested in. he was interested in. So these factors, I think, played a role in him being as good as he was and capturing the kinds of stories that he did.
And I think a lot of it as well was simply just passion. I mean, you love what he was
Absolutely.
doing, and that's what pushed him.
Absolutely.
So kids, pick a job that you like. Don't do what I did. That's okay.
Yes.
So,
I'm going for it.
educate ourselves.
Yes.
So, my grandfather spent some time in jail, and even today we see many journalists prosecuted around the world for doing their job. What measures do you think can be put into place to protect journalists?
It's a very tough question. I think people have tried. I think there's a lot more protection now because of social media and because there is more information about journalists that are prosecuted or jailed or arrested. The stories come out quicker and there's a bigger outcry. The problem we have with journalism now is, and we are to blame for this, we as in the journalistic community, we're no longer seen as being objective. I think during his time, journalists had a special kind of, they were given a big pass, especially in war zones, because they were seen as being objective. They were seen as just being there to tell the story. They were not part of the conflict. Since the late 90s, early 2000s, I think journalism has been tainted in some way, in that journalists have decided to take sides in certain conflicts. This idea of being embedded with military, this idea of journalists carrying weapons in some places. This has removed that objectivity, and so they're seen as being part of the conflict and therefore fair game to be prosecuted, to be killed. More journalists are being killed now than ever before in history, in every conflict. I also think, unfortunately, that because of the pressure of 24-hour news, of social media, journalists feel that they have to get even closer to the action in order to get, especially photojournalists, in order to get that picture, in order to get that one shot that, especially if you're a freelancer, will make your year, will get you enough money and awards that you'll be able to live off the year. But if you don't get that picture, the chances are that you will starve. You know, you won't have another job for a while, and you will have struggled to make ends meet. So that pressure, I feel, is pushing young journalists even harder to take risks that they never had to take before. And this cycle of having to instantly transmit news rather than taking time to absorb the story, understand it, and do it safely is causing a lot more journalists to die.
And I think, touching upon that, and Safia will talk about it later on this month in terms of trauma. At that time, I'm not too sure, but when we heard about Mo Amin going to jail at the age of 23, I mean, I'm sure he suffered from so much trauma, so much pain. Did he ever talk about it? Or was it that type of situation where it's kind of like, okay, mental health is not that serious, let's just put it aside? But
I don't think I know he never talked about it to me. I don't think he talked about it to anybody. I don't think that they definitely, that generation, and like I said, Safi is doing this for everyone here. We're gonna do a little shout out to the session on the 10th of November next week, where we will be screening The Sound Man, and Abdul is here, and then talking a little bit about trauma and mental health to journalists, covering whether it's post-election violence or it's stories about rape or abortion, or really difficult stories, both men and women journalists. So Safia will be leading that session on the 10th, and I hope you can join us there. But his generation of journalists didn't know there was no such word as PTSD. That phrase was it didn't exist. They were just told, get on with it. There was they didn't know what it was. They didn't know what to do with this trauma. And a lot of it manifested in their relationships, in alcoholism, in drugs. This is the only way they could deal with what they had seen and the things that they had experienced. But there was no counseling, they didn't know that you could get help for this. That this was something like any other illness, that there is a cure for it, there is a way to get out of it, and they didn't have that thing. Fortunately, media organizations have understood this is a very serious illness, and they have put in place, most media organizations have in-house counseling, external counseling. They let people who've come back from war zones express themselves and go and seek help. And these are good things.
And I think with that question, I would like to get into more personal and candid questions for you now. And I think it's not only important for him, but for you guys as well, to understand that it is okay to feel, it's okay to have emotion, it's okay to still be affected by something that happened a long time ago. So, of course, you have to answer if you feel like it's too much, but I think all of us can benefit from it. So, at the age of 25, you had the responsibility to take over a company that, from what I've gathered, you didn't know much about. And you had to fit into very big shoes, and your father was amazing, as you can all see. How did you feel? Truthfully, how did you go through that?
Well, I didn't really feel. This was the problem, is that I just had to do. I never took time to warn him. I never took the time, I didn't have the time to understand what this all meant to not just me, but to your mom. When she was pregnant with your sister, who was born just 10 days after he died, so we were dealing with this whole roller coaster of emotions, as well, of losing him and then having the joy of your sister coming into our lives, and then you, but that was so I never, and then I had to kind of figure out what I was supposed to do with this thing, not having siblings, not having anybody else to be able to bounce this stuff off or get help. I had to navigate through all of this, and I was just learning as I was going along, and I didn't really have the time to sit and process this and put it through, and maybe I still haven't, and maybe that's something that's manifested and messed itself up inside me as well, that I never got to properly mourn him. And it's through making a film like this that I got to understand him, know him, and I probably could have spent 3 years with a psychiatrist and would have come to the same conclusion, but it was cheaper to make a film, and do that, and it was more fun making a film. But that's the only way I really understood him or knew him, was by making this film and talking to people that knew him better than me, and those were his work colleagues.
So you never really had the opportunity to mourn and grieve the loss of your father. Do you think, as time goes by, it does get hard at times, or it gets harder, or do you feel like you will probably one day sit down and be like, oh my God, I was...
Shoot.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's not good.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, at this point, again, it's just, thankfully for the support that I got from your mom, who's here as well, by the way, hiding away in the corner there, and her going through that whole time with me. My mom, who's, still around, unfortunately not well, but still around, and really having, and then you and your sister coming into our lives has helped to navigate through that.
So we can agree that the father-son relationship is complex. So this film was a journey for you to discover your dad and more about him. If he was alive today, what do you think you would want to say to him?
That's a good question. I definitely tell him I'm doing a better job of running his company than he is. But no, I don't know what I'll tell him. I mean, I'd like to tell him that I wish he'd taught me a bit more. I wish he had spent time with me. discovered how many people he helped in his life, how many young journalists he helped in his life to become who they became. And I sometimes feel, you never had the time for me to ever teach me anything. Maybe he thought he had time, because he was only 52, he was exactly my age when he died. And so I keep thinking maybe he thought he had more time to teach me things, and that was taken away very quickly. But I feel bad that he wasn't able to teach me more. But maybe he didn't think I had potential. And when I look back at my life, I didn't prove to him while he was alive that I had any potential. I was very interested in just partying and not in working hard. I didn't have that drive that he had, and maybe he just thought, this guy is let him just cruise along, and we'll figure it out a little bit later.
But, honestly, at the age of 23, I think, well, that's how old I am now. I mean, I'm not thinking here, okay, I want to run this company, I know how to do this, I know how to do that. Like, give yourself
the advice I can give you, you should be thinking about all of these things.
I can help you here. Feel better. But I do think that you should not be so hard on yourself, because how can you know what to do at that age?
I mean, I knew what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and I knew, but maybe I should have taken more of an interest in how to run a company. I knew how to do my job. I knew how to produce things. I knew how to shoot. I knew how to edit. The sad thing is, I know how to do none of those things now. I really don't know how to. I don't know how to film. I don't know how to edit. I can produce a little bit, and I can present a few things. But really, the things that I love doing, which is sitting in front of an edit machine, I can't do them because this technology has overtaken me completely. I can't. We have Anthony here, one of our star camera people. We have Trupti here, who's our star editor. And I look at what they use and what they do, and I'm thinking, I can't even understand. I need a PhD to just switch the camera on. I don't even know where the button is to switch it on. So these are things that technology is, and so I've become a paper pusher. And I've moved things from one side of my desk to the other. And for 20 years, she thought I just replied to emails. That was my job. Right? When she asked, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm replying to emails." And so that is my job, is just to reply to emails. But the world has changed an enormous amount. I wish he had taught me a lot more. I wish I'd had more time with him to understand the things that he did and what made him tick. But sometimes you don't get those opportunities. So the lessons to people here is, don't think that you will have an opportunity tomorrow to do something. Do it today. Do whatever you can today. Learn from whoever you can today. Talk to people. Talk to your parents, grandparents. Get their stories, because they all have fascinating stories. But just take the time to sit down and talk to them. And I'm guilty of that too. I avoid my mother like the plague. I don't talk to her because we get into arguments and fights. So I try and avoid talking to her. And it's very wrong. It's very wrong.
We need to correct it.
Yeah.
So do you think the journey you took to make this film has healed that which you seek to heal, or found what you sought?
Yes and no. I mean, I got to understand and learn a lot more about him, good and bad, and what made him as successful as he was and what drove him. I think it did heal a lot of things in terms of my relationship with him, but it didn't. You can't bring back that time that we lost. So there's also still a lot of regret, and there will always be a lot of regret that I never got to spend more time with him. But now I'm actually learning so much more about his work by going through his archive and understanding this archive and seeing some of these photos and things like that now. One, it boggles my mind that in 52 years, well, it embarrasses me that I've done one book, I've published one book in my 52 years on this world. He had done 75 coffee table books by the time that he died. 75. Plus, that was his hobby. Doing books was just his side thing, his side gig. 3 million images, from covering countries across the continent, Asia, the Middle East, Afghanistan. I'm thinking, where? And in an age where there was no mobile phones, where it was really difficult to get on flights and go to these places, how the hell did he do all of this stuff? And he made films, dozens and dozens of documentaries, covered dozens and dozens of news stories, hundreds of news stories. I don't understand where he got the time to do this. And so when I look back, I think, God, don't complain about your life. Just get on with it, because you've got a lot of things that you need to do. And that always is an inspiration for me.
And I think it's good that you're seeing that way. And I'm very proud of you for you. That one
Thank
book.
Yes, nobody bought the book, but it's okay. It came out and somebody bought it.
Just decrease the price. So, as a father yourself, would you want what would you want to teach your father about being a dad?
Spare the rod and spoil the He never beat me enough, so I need to do that. I need to take that up with them.
So you mentioned that he cried only 3 times in his life.
Yeah.
How many times did you cry?
Every time I see you at school, every time I see your fees that I have to pay, because you want to do another degree, and yet another degree. Your sister's just finished 2 masters, and I'm thinking, why? I don't even have a degree. But yes, so every time I see you, what I didn't mention in that film, is the other time he cried was that when he saw my bar bill from university. That's when he cried as well, when he saw how much he had to pay for me to go out drinking.
But in all seriousness, though, what would you want to teach your father about me?
I think one, being there more for your children, for whatever the mistakes that I've made, and there've been plenty of them in terms of bringing the 2 of you up. I tried to be there for events. He never ever visited my school. He never ever came to any school event that I had. I've tried to be there for you guys, your sports days, your dramas, the most boring place. Mind-blowingly, boringly, you just want to kill yourself by coming to these school plays. But we sat, both Susanna and myself sat through them agonizingly. But he only came to my school when the headmaster called him to say, why are you sending your son to school and wasting your fees? Because it's useless. And then to see at my university, when I graduated I went to university in Canada, in Vancouver, the furthest possible place on the planet that I could get away from him but he came for my graduation for 1 day, he came. And that was just to see, because I used to have to send in expenses every month. I would have to write down everything I spent and send him receipts for these before he sent me the following month's money. But he came to check the prices of the food to see if I was conning him, to see if I was exaggerating the things. And obviously I couldn't put, anything like smoking or cigarettes. I couldn't put that in the expenses, so I had to exaggerate the food side of things, and collect receipts from my friends to do that. Creative accounting. So I did learn something from him in that way. But yes, so I would go back to say, listen, spend a bit more time coming. But then he wouldn't have been as, you see, that's the other flip side. He wouldn't have been as successful, he wouldn't have created all of this content if he had spent more time with me. So do we deprive the world of this wonderful treasure that he's left behind? Or do we, do I get to have a few more hugs?
I think there's always balance, and in some way, shape, or form. I do think that
He had no balance.
Yeah,
He did
there's
have
no,
no
it
balance.
was just either career like me, like my grandma said, it was just his career all the time. But going back on you feeling like you made mistakes with my sister and I actually found this quote on Instagram, and it says, it says, make mistakes, don't regret them, learn from them, because they're the hardest things to carry when you get older. And I think it's important for you to understand that yes, everybody makes mistakes, everybody here has made a bunch of mistakes, but you've been there for me and my sister through a lot, continue to do that, and you are nothing like your father in that way. And we love you very, very much.
Oh, thank
So I
you.
just hope
I
you know
love
that.
you guys.
Thank you. So, going back to just last two questions, and then we'll give it to you guys to ask questions. But is there any sort of anger or resentment that you have towards him? And his early death that you still sometimes struggle to come to terms with?
No anger or resentment. No, he was who he was. What he achieved is incredible. I am so lucky that I had a similar passion and journey. Otherwise, if I didn't love this work and this profession and doing what he did, then a lot of this would have been lost forever. And so I'm just grateful that I have the opportunity to be able to curate things like this, to be able to expose some of this work to people of many generations, because I think this to me is what I love. I love archives, and I love content, and I love creating content, and leaving something for younger generations to be able to learn about their history. Because I also feel that it's this world that we live in, young people have very little clue about their history. And if you don't have a knowledge of your history, you can never go forward in life. You'll keep repeating, talking about mistakes and repeating those mistakes. If you don't understand your history and where you've come from and the mistakes that have been made in history, we will keep repeating those mistakes and we will never learn from those. And I feel by exposing generations to this kind of content, they will be inspired, they will understand, they will know who fought for the freedoms of countries like Kenya, and why they should be remembered and why it's so important for them. And he's one of those people that contributed so much to the world that I would like his name to be remembered amongst that as well. I am, yes.
So, what is one piece of advice he gave you while he was alive that you still carry on till this day?
There's lots of things. Whoa.
Something that we will all benefit from. Not
Okay.
not something rude.
Well, if you're in this business, never trust anything that's given to you unless you check it yourself. So when I was covering the Safari Rally with him, he would obviously give me his cameras, 2 cameras to go and photograph the rally. So we went out one day and gave me the 2 cameras, and I went and I was clicking cars coming through. And those days for the younger lot don't know about, the cameras it was 36 pictures in 1 roll of film, and there was a little counter at the top of the camera that went up to 36, and at that point it stopped and you rewound it, took out the film and changed the film. So this counter got to 30, and it didn't, there was nothing I didn't understand why the film was not stopping. And so eventually, I was a little bit away from him, so I put it under my shirt because I didn't want to expose the thing, and I popped open the thing, and I realized there was no film in either camera. So I spent the whole day photographing with nothing because I never bothered to check. I assumed that he had given me a camera with film in it. And he said, yeah, you see, you should always check your equipment. Never trust anybody to do something for you. Make sure you check everything. And I never made that mistake again. I will always check, no matter what anybody gives me, I will always check to make sure that it is there. And give me an envelope and say, we've put this in, a flash disk, to say this and this and this is on there, we'll always check that it's there. So that was one. And I guess in life, in everything, check what is given to you, double check, triple check, just to be sure.
I learned a lot in this, honestly, and I had a really good time. Thank you so much for answering all
Well,
the
you've got
questions.
3 generations in one seat. So there you go.
And honestly, thank you as well to the crowd. You guys made me feel so comfortable.